So this video I've made is of my first visit to Perryville Battlefield in Kentucky. Battle of October 8th, 1862. With Bragg, Confederate General Bragg, and Kirby Smith's invasion of Kentucky, trying to bring Kentucky into the fold of the Confederacy. They were defeated here, and in the end they retreated back to Tennessee. This is my first visit, so there may be some inaccuracies. Forgive me. Some of the facts. You can watch it for what it's worth. It was a beautiful day out here, and if you've never been to Perryville, or if you have been before, you might just enjoy the scenery. But again, I apologize if there are any errors factually. First visit, happy to be here, and I hope you can glean something from this video. Well, we woke up this morning, April 6th, and the sun is glorious. We've had very little sun on this trip so far. What we're looking at is the Confederate Memorial here at Perryville Battlefield State Park in Kentucky. And there are several hundred mostly unknown Confederates buried right here. I'm going to tour the battlefield today, and what a beautiful day we have to do it. So here at Perryville Battlefield in Kentucky, on this beautiful morning, so peaceful. In October of 1862, this was the site of a nasty battle. It raged very fiercely for about 4 hours. Confederates would have advanced in the beginning from the left of this picture to the right. You have Donelson's brigade in the distance, which we can't quite see. They led off the attack. Stewart's brigade would be right in the middle there where that hill is. They came in later. And right here we have Maney's attack on the Confederate right flank. And he attacked with about 1,900 men. And these Confederates were so determined. They took major casualties, all these brigades. And Maney attacked across this field up to that hill in the distance, which the Union had 2,400 men under Terrell's brigade and an artillery battery of 8 guns. And Maney's brigade, after advancing and pausing and advancing again, took that battery and drove the Union off that ridge. And they had a lot of help from the artillery battery that was with them, Turner's battery, which were just to our right. And this battle seems to be one of the few times where the Confederate artillery, in many cases, the batteries moved up with the infantry and were very effective in supporting the attacks. So I'm going to walk straight ahead now over to, I believe it's called Parsons Ridge, where Parsons' 8-gun battery was deployed and captured by Maney's brigade. Let's head over there. So we are walking along the line of Maney's attack, approaching the fence where his brigade paused before assaulting Parsons Ridge right in front of us. You may see some men up there working on the ridge. Today is Parks Day, so we have quite a group of men here. They were all men, and they're painting and repairing things. So thank you, guys. It already looks better, the little bit that we saw that they've done this morning. They're going to be out here all day maintaining the park for us. Volunteers. Thank you. So here we see Maney's fence. This is stop 5 on this walk near the visitor center. And here we have the fence where they paused momentarily. Union cannon was shattering this fence. The bravery of these men is absolutely remarkable. Under that fire, and they continued on. Even so, they realized they couldn't stay in that position, and so they assaulted the ridge.
You want to
So we are atop Parsons Ridge now. This is the site where the Union General James Jackson fell. And to our right would be Starkweather's Hill, the next ridge that Maney's brigade needed to assault. And they did. Let's head over there. And then this cornfield, which is between two ridges, was the 21st Wisconsin. And these poor soldiers were hit with fire from both sides, enemy and friendly. And what I understand is they only got one shot off, basically. And they retreated with all of the officers killed or wounded from this regiment. We're going to head up here to Starkweather's Hill. So we're between Parsons Ridge and Starkweather's. So I'm filming here between Parsons Ridge and Starkweather's Ridge. And we're looking at Parsons Ridge. And that's where Terrell's brigade was with 8 cannon. They were driven off by Maney's brigade. Terrell's, at least some of his men, the little bit I know, went to the right to seek shelter. But that didn't work out too well. They had to retreat from there. But the plaque in the center there of this picture is where General Jackson was killed of the Union Army. And you'll see men up there working on that cannon. Those are the volunteers. And they're painting that cannon up there. Once again, thank you, men, for your good work. So let's continue now on to Starkweather's Hill. Starkweather's Hill. And after Maney's brigade overtook the Union men up here and captured many cannon, I think 4 of them, Starkweather retreated to a stone wall as the Union continued their stubborn resistance, falling back from one position to another. And look at this beautiful landscape off to the left of the Union position here, as we are on the far left of the Union lines. That beautiful Kentucky land. Hard to imagine such a peaceful place having such violence here. And Maney's final line is forward down here, which we may get to later. Well, this spot on the battlefield is marked, as you see, Act of Mercy. And this is the famous story of William Woodward of the 79th Pennsylvania, who was wounded in this area. And a Confederate soldier later that night wandered upon him, and Woodward had no water, so the Confederate gave him a drink and then decided to leave his canteen with him full of water and took Woodward's empty canteen. So in all this violence, a wonderful, wonderful act of mercy here. And this is a photo of Woodward years later. And the park historian that we spoke to mentioned that one of Woodward's relatives has the canteen and actually brought it back to the battlefield here a little while back. Pretty amazing. And here at Stop 10, we have this tablet that explains the 16th Tennessee's advance. They were the first regiment to begin this attack, along with 2 other Tennessee regiments from Donelson's brigade. They reached this position of the Widow Gibson's cabins, but they continued forward with more than 50% losses up to the next ridge there in the distance. And in that area, they paused and waited for reinforcements from Wood's brigade and from Stewart's brigade coming from behind, and Maney on their flank. They lost more men killed and wounded than any other Southern regiment in the battle. And they were stopped on that ridge ahead of us by a Union brigade under Webster. So the widow Gibson's cabin would have been in front of us somewhere on this ridge or the next. And it is said that when the battle came, she was getting ready to leave, but the battle arrived so quickly that she took a hatchet and chopped through the floor of a house and hid under there with her 2 children until the battle was over. And it said she stayed there for several days, but it seems the family was okay. And this is the area where the 16th Tennessee moved into this valley, as the plaque says, when met with a deadly surprise, a crossfire. And as we said, they continued advancing. After confusion, they regrouped. They moved ahead to the widow Gibson cabin, which is up at that tablet in the distance there. And a little beyond that point. And this is a photo of Colonel Savage, who was he had a lot of bitterness toward his commanders. That lasted until his death, I think in 1905. But he carried on a feud with General Donaldson and Polk and Maney in particular about their lack of support for his regiment and sending them out what he felt unsupported, and apparently they were not supported enough. And I think a lot of it had to do with the cavalry not locating the left flank of the Union line properly. So Donaldson actually attacked more in the center of the line and was hit with a crossfire. Okay, so we're going to head on to the next area of the park. Well, as we drive the gravel road over to the next area of interest, from this point you get a pretty good view of Donaldson's advance in the 16th Tennessee from right to left. And here you can see the hills one after the other that they would have to climb and go down and up the next. You see the visitor center right over in that area. And 16th Tennessee and Donaldson's brigade, but especially 16th Tennessee, would have gone right over these hills and down and up again to the Widow Glen cabin right in this area. You'll see the plaque right there. And then they continued on to the next ridge in the distance there, which I think would be the final Union line. I'm not sure. We're going to be discovering a little more as we go. So there you have a pretty good view of the rolling hills of the attack and defense in this area. So we're in the Jones Ford Trail area. Never been at this park before, as I said, so not quite sure what we're going to be seeing, but we're going to walk to our left here and look at these Union batteries. And I don't know if I'm going to formally be on the Jones Ford Trail, but we'll take a little journey. Let's see what we find. So I know there were 2 Union batteries up here. I think Harris and Stevenson up on this ridge. This is more toward the right of the Union line. Okay, the center. The defense of the center. Here on this ridge, Union soldiers established a strong defensive position up on this ridge. We have Harris's brigade and Lytle's brigade To our left, Simonson's Battery right here. More cannon to our right. And Jones' Brigade of the Confederates would have attacked this area, and along with Brown's Brigade of Floridians and Mississippian, and Johnson's Brigade a little bit to our right. And then finally Cleburne's Brigade, the Stonewall Jackson of the West. All right, so let's take a look at this area. And this is the position of Simonson's Battery in the Union Center, beginning with artillery duel with the Confederate cannon on the hill beyond, out here. And then later, when the Confederate infantry attacked, they defended this area and then fell back about 300 yards near the Russell House and the final Union position back there behind us. This battery alone fired 755 rounds. And this is the terrain that greeted Jones' Confederate Brigade as they crested this little ridge, and they attacked Simonson's Battery, supported by 2 brigades of Harris and Lytle Union troops. And the Mississippians just couldn't take that, and then Brown's Brigade arrived, and finally Wood's Confederate Brigade, as the Union troops were running out of ammunition, were able to drive them off that ridge. Tough fight on both sides. This is a tablet describing the 42nd Indiana's experience briefly here at the Battle of Perryville. They were looking for water here in Doctors Creek. This was their first battle. And they moved pretty much to the left of this scene, down the creek, to find water. But then when the Confederates attacked, they were trapped because there were huge bluffs on either side of the creek there. Many of them suffered. They did retreat, the survivors, and they joined the main Union line. But this was their first battle. And I would imagine that most every one of us, except those who have actually experienced battle, could not have any idea what these men were going through. So here we have Doctors Creek, which was the only source of water in this area. So both armies were trying to get water from this creek. At that time, there was a drought in October of 1862, September and October. Very little water in the area, but this is where they came to fill their canteens. Doctors Creek. This is the Henry Bottom House in the vicinity of Buckner's Confederate Division's advance. And he lost terribly at this battle. So much livestock, and really his farm was destroyed. But I believe this is the man who, along with others, buried the Confederate dead up on the hill at the visitor center after the battle, as many as he could. So we're walking up a hill here near the Bottom House, and on the left in this area were the regiment of Ohio troops that held back Bushrod Johnson's attack of Confederates. And then later, Patrick Cleburne's troops overran this position. I think it was Adams' brigade of Confederates also on Cleburne's left that would have outflanked the Ohioans here. We're now in the area of the famous burned barn of Bottom's farm here. Not only did the barn burn, we're on the extreme right of the Union line, where the 15th Kentucky would have been posted after relieving the 3rd Ohio in this area. But not only did the farm burn, but because of the drought, the surrounding fields were so dry that fire spread across this hill here. We're walking along the Union line at this point, 15th Kentucky. 3rd Ohio would be in front of us, facing to the right. The Confederate attacks would have come on this part of the field from the bottom house, which is on the right there in the trees, the White House. You can see the bridge over Doctors Creek. The Confederates would have come from the hills beyond. Bushrod Johnson, and then Adams to his left, which is on the right of this picture, and then Cleburne behind them. Confederate attack coming right toward the camera here along the Union line position, 15th Kentucky and the 103rd Ohio. Eventually this position being taken by the Confederates. And this would be the hill that Cleburne's brigade would have attacked on October 8th, 1862, driving the 10th Ohio from this position. We're going to walk along the lines. And all of these Union troops were the 1st Corps troops, about 18,000 men or so, being attacked by about 16,000 Confederate troops. What Bragg didn't realize was that there were 40,000 more Union troops to the right of this area. And after the battle, when it was over, so tragically, all those lives lost and wounded men, the terror of it all, Bragg realized he had to retreat, and they went all the way back to Tennessee. And so even though the Confederates won a tactical victory here strategically, the Union won this battle and Kentucky remained in the Union, which was Bragg's goal, was to bring Kentucky into the Confederate fold. But he failed here. This is another cannon position here, Loomis's battery, which dueled, as you see, with the Confederates on the hill in the far distance. I think it said they fired the first and last shot of this battle. Loomis's battery, with Simonson's battery just to the left over here where we started this tour of this area. So let's do one more loop and we'll move on. Here's the site of the Russell House, which was General McCook's headquarters of the 1st Corps Union. And the climax of the battle was right in this area at the crossroads in front of us to the right. We'll be heading over there. And this is the site of where Major General Polk, on the evening of October 8th, it was getting dark, rode up to this point, and it was actually in the Union lines, and he commanded them to cease fire, and they did. And then he rode back to his lines, and the Confederates reopened their attack against the Union position. The historian at the visitor center said to me that Polk rode over here in this area, which was not the area of his troops, but his son was in a regiment over here, so he was checking on how his son was, and he accidentally rode behind the enemy lines. This is the Dixville Crossroads, which was a major intersection in this area. And had the Confederates captured this and held it, the Union 1st Corps would have been cut off from the rest of the army. But Gooding's brigade from the 3rd Corps came over to this area. And though they suffered many casualties, they did help to hold this intersection in the evening, and the battle ended, I believe, somewhere around 6 o'clock or so in the evening. This is only a few hundred yards, I think, up the road from the Russell House. So we are here at the Wisconsin Battery position here, Penny's Battery. We're at the Dixville Crossroads, and the Russell House is up that path in the center of the picture near the large tree over there. So we're very close to the Russell House. And this was the final position of the Union where they held as they received reinforcements from Gooding's Brigade. And we also have Lytle's Brigade in the area. Hotchkins, the Minnesota Battery, ahead of us to the right. And additional Union troops here holding this area in the evening of October 8th. They held this area for most of the day. And here we have the plaque to Harris's Battery, which also had to fall back as the infantry fell back. Here's a little map. The Russell House, as you see here at the bottom of the map, is just to our right. Confederate attacks coming from in front. Donelson's brigade first. They were stopped, and then I believe Wood's brigade came up from the right flank here, shattering the brigade. Webster's brigade, they fell back. So here we are in the area of the high water mark of the Confederate troops at the Battle of Perryville. In the distance, you see the ridge with Webster's brigade was stationed, and I believe it was Harris's artillery up on that ridge there. And so the Confederate troops advanced to this area and could go no further. And so as evening came, the Battle of Perryville ended. And so tragically, the loss of life and all the wounded and the trauma, but also so tragically, after Confederate troops fighting for each ridge and the next one and the next, and the Union stubborn defense, Bragg realized that he was outnumbered. There were 2 more Federal Corps in the area, 40,000 additional troops. He was outnumbered about 3 to 1 here, and he realized that he had to retreat. And so General Bragg with his army, and Kirby Smith, who was nearby, Confederate general with his army, retreated all the way back to Tennessee. And Kentucky remained, or was not brought into the fold of the Confederacy. And so Bragg's objective had failed, and the war went on in Tennessee, and then Georgia, and beyond. We're going to visit a couple of sites of artillery positions of the Confederacy, and then we'll conclude our tour. So we are finishing a long, steep trek up this hill east of the main infantry battle area up here at Perryville. And here, with these dummy cannon silhouettes, we have the position of Karnes' Tennessee Battery, which would have been dueling with Loomis's battery across the battlefield in the distance on the hills beyond. And to our left here would be Sanford's Mississippi Battery, also participating somewhere in that area. So these are the Confederate long-range artillery positions here. across Doctors Creek. You can see in the distance a walking path on the battlefield, and to the left one of the park roads. So a view from the Confederate artillery position at Perryville Battlefield, October 8th, 1862. This is the Dye House, which was General Simon Bolivar Buckner's headquarters during the Battle of Perryville. Bolivar was a native Kentuckian, and prior to this battle, he had surrendered Fort Donelson in Tennessee, and he became a prisoner. But later he was exchanged, and he fought in this campaign and went on to fight. He helped build fortified positions in Mobile, Alabama, and he fought at Chickamauga. One of the very few battles where the Confederates outnumbered the Union troops, at Chickamauga. So this was Bolivar's headquarters. And we are just east of the main part of the battlefield. There are a couple of Confederate batteries up here too, but after all the walking today, I think we're going to pass on those. But there are also Confederate artillery positions here, in addition to the ones we saw a few moments ago. And these batteries would have been dueling with the Union batteries in long-range fire. General Buckner's headquarters at the Battle of Perryville. We are standing at the Crawford House, which was General Braxton Bragg's headquarters during the Battle of Perryville in 1862. And there is some major rehabilitation going on this house right now. And they're going to have it in some good shape after a while. Right now it's slightly run down, but there are plenty of supplies here, and they're doing serious work to fix this place up. So General Bragg stayed here. Can't really see much in there right now. There's a fireplace. All right, so they're doing a lot of work, and they'll have this place in shape at some point. I assume that's the National Park Service doing this. Well, I'm sorry, this is the Kentucky State Parks. So Braxton Bragg's headquarters here at Perryville. And here you can see some of the exterior rehabilitation work that's being done here at the Crawford House. Bragg's headquarters. It is today, April 6th, 2024.